just wanted to do that one today. But I do have this video. I did want to watch this video. I had saved it to go over with you guys. Yeah, we're going to the content farm. Reaction channels now. I gotta do my weekly reaction slop. I'll make myself here. We'll bring Buggy up. The people liked Buggy. Yeah, so this video is called Creepypastas Based on True Stories. It kind of brought me in. I have no idea what is going to be in here, but I'm kind of interested and I wanted to watch it with you guys.
Abandoned by Disney. Abandoned by Disney is a whole series of creepypastas surrounding Disney's alleged unexplained abandonment of certain resorts in the Bahamas and in the US. The Abandoned by Disney creepypasta was originally written by Slimebeast, a well-known internet horror writer who's created several viral creepypastas, including Funny Mouth,
well-known, and I've never heard of him. Anyways.
I Hate You, and Lost Episodes. The Abandoned by Disney story basically goes that at some undefined point in the 2000s, Disney allegedly spent $30 million on a resort in the Bahamas called Treasure Island, which, according to the story, they supposedly...
Maybe turn off alerts for the video. I can mute them later on. This is the giggle ship man. He shows up and he giggles and he shits. That's crazy. Why does this make me laugh so much? You would laugh at that, Amelia. Giggle shit, man. Holy fuck.
Story they supposedly later abandoned without a convincing reason. Based on the creepypasta, there was another resort that Disney abandoned under mysterious circumstances. This one was located near the beachside city of Emerald Isle in North Carolina, and it was supposed to be a jungle-themed resort by the name of Mowgli's Palace. According to Slimebeast, the project was extremely controversial.
Mowgli, is that Brother Bear? Jungle Book. Fuck!
As Disney allegedly did some pretty sketchy stuff to acquire the land they required for the palace.
Jungkook
Still,
BTS!
The creepypasta mentions that construction for Mowgli's Palace did end up getting completed and even started to receive tourists for a while before being unexplainably abandoned in some pretty murky circumstances. The author of the story then alleges that he ended up visiting the abandoned resort to take some pictures and see what he could find. And that's where the...
it always comes down. We'll always go back to urban exploration. Somehow the reaction video will come back to Urbex. Urbex, my beloved.
The resort had pretty much been stripped bare and left to rot over the years. Most of the things that were big enough to take back from the resort had been stolen.
Pills! Wait, hold on.
Most of the things that were big...
Pills here!
Big enough to take back from the resort had been stolen, leaving only desks, refrigerators, abandoned statues, other miscellaneous objects, and the buildings themselves to show for the once functional Mowgli's Palace.
Damn!
Allegedly, Disney had also released their exotic animals onto the grounds upon abandoning the resort, including the sharks they once kept in their aquarium and their 80-foot-long pythons, one of which supposedly slithered right in front of the creepypasta author, who initially assumed it was a statue. Disturbingly, the creepypasta mentions that dozens of walls, staircases, and objects lying around the resort had been spray-painted with the words "Abandoned by Disney," possibly by disgruntled employees who were fed up with Disney's sketchy doings. At one point in the story, the author allegedly went down the stairs into a room that was labeled "Mascots Only" and came across a photo-negative version of a Mickey Mouse costume that somehow came to life and...
Please. Evil Mickey Mouse. It's fucking FNAF.
Pulled its own head off in front of the author to scare him. Now, obviously, pretty much every single detail about this story from start to finish is completely fake. The same goes for every other story that's a part of this Abandoned by Disney creepypasta series.
Please! The thumbnail for this is so fucking funny. If I saw this in real life, I would think, like, this looks like a Mickey Mouse you would find on the street of Times Square trying to get a picture with you for money.
But it actually was based on some real events. There was once a real resort on a real island that Disney mysteriously abandoned back in the late 90s.
Hi, Diggy.
Between 1974 and 1999,
Mickey Mouse
Discovery
ice cream
Island
version.
in Bay Lake, Florida was a popular Disney attraction open to the public, who were drawn there by the dozens of wild animal species.
Oh, that was a
roaming around the
wicked
tropical
mullet
landscape.
on that guy.
Disturbingly, the resort ended up getting charged with animal cruelty after the company admitted that a few vultures had died after being captured by their employees.
Not the vultures.
For unrelated, unspecified, and mysterious reasons, Disney Island was closed in 1999, and the name Discovery Island was passed on to one of the lands in Disney's Animal Kingdom. Since its closing, the island was pretty much left abandoned to rot under the elements, and over the years its structures have sustained major hurricane damage. Interestingly, as of 2024, all buildings and attractions of the original resort remain on the island, which gives it a pretty creepy and nostalgic vibe. Nowadays, the area is fully off limits to the public, but that hasn't stopped a few urban explorers from venturing out into the island and finding some pretty disturbing stuff.
What the hell?
In 2004, urban explorer Shane Perez visited the island 5 years after its abandonment, swimming through 300 feet of freezing cold alligator-infested Florida lake water to reach Discovery Island and spend the night exploring the remains of the mysterious resort.
What's
Interestingly,
wrong with you?
during their visit, Shane and his friends discovered that several lights throughout the island were still somehow working. And a little more disturbingly, they found all kinds of odd things in the abandoned sheds, including snakes stuffed in
Diet Coke! Let's go! Would you drink the forbidden snake Diet Coke?
Coke bottles, and a bunch of animals that were left behind by Disney when the island closed, which is pretty similar to what was mentioned in the fictional Creepypasta. Although Shane and his friends were only able to explore half of the island before the sun rose again, they uploaded all of their findings onto a now infamous blog post that ended up being featured on the news. Obviously, this didn't make Disney look too good, and as a result of trespassing, Shane was banned from all Disney resorts for the rest of his life. But he triggered a wave of intrigue around the island.
How did they even figure that out? Like, how would they know? Did they just have like an ID checker that, like, if you try to go to a Disney resort, they check your ID and it comes up as like banned from Disney resorts?
Over the years, a few more urban explorers have attempted to explore the island.
They got
leading to
facial
some
tracking?
pretty
No
interesting
way.
Videos, blog posts, and pictures. Nowadays, the island is under extremely heavy 24/7 surveillance, which would make it
What
almost
the hell?
impossible to explore for a regular civilian. Still, the abandoned island turned creepypasta was one of the dozens of things that have irreparably damaged the public's perception of Disney, as it's pretty clear that behind the cute mouse costumes and the fairy tale facade, there's a bunch of stuff the higher-ups of the company definitely don't want the public to see. The Smiling Man.
Ooh,
In
this
April
sounds creepy.
2012, a Reddit user named Blue Title posted a story titled
my
The
nose bleeding?
Smiling Man. The story basically goes that at some point in 2012, Blue Title went for a solo walk in the middle of the night in Seattle, Washington after his roommate had fallen asleep. At some point in the evening between the hours of 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., he saw a strange-looking man dancing at the other end of the street. In the user's own words,
I'd
it
shit
was a strange
myself.
dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd
Is my nose
forward
sleeping?
stride.
No, bleeding.
I guess
I
you could
said
say
bleeding.
he was dance-walking, headed straight for me. At first, Blue Title tried to walk past him, giving the man as much space as possible to avoid coming into contact.
Wait, hold on. I could have sworn someone has made an indie game about this story. Genuinely, I feel like I remember watching like a Markiplier video where he was playing like the like he plays like a bunch of like itch.io like scary games. I think someone made a game off this story, actually.
With him, but the guy just kept dancing closer and closer. What's most disturbing about the account is the way the user describes the man's appearance. Based on the original post, the man was tall and lanky, wore an old suit, and had an extremely eerie expression on his face. His eyes were wide
Sounds like the
open
dancing
and his head
grandma.
was
Do
tilted
you mean
back to
the
look at
Serbian
sky.
dancing lady?
Even more unsettling, his mouth was twisted into a forced-looking smile that seemed permanently fixed on his face.
Yeah, I love the
To make a
song
long
that
story
people
short, the
associate
Smiling
with it
Man
on
ended up
TikTok.
chasing Blue Title for several blocks until the user eventually outran him and made it back to his apartment safely. There's a lot more detail to the chase, but I'm leaving out some of it for simplicity. Based on what was mentioned in the post, the user continued to live in that city for another 6 months and never went out on another solo late-night walk again. Now, this is usually the kind of story that you would read and immediately dismiss as fake, but The Smiling Man is one of those posts that there's no good reason to believe it's not true. After the story was posted, the smiling man turned into something of an urban legend and became a classic creepypasta, often being featured in horror forms and even being turned into multiple different viral short films over the years. Still, the original story was not designed to be a creepypasta.
This video would have killed in 2016. I'm sure it did.
The author has continued to insist it's real. For context, the Let's Not Meet subreddit, which is where the story was originally posted, was created for people to share their true accounts of scary in-person encounters they experienced firsthand. As per the guidelines of the subreddit, no fictional or paranormal stories are allowed, and any indication that a story was made up usually results in the post being immediately removed. All this to say that the Let's Not Meet admins make a big effort to keep the subreddit clean from any kind of stories that are obviously fake. That's not to say that some fabricated stories don't slip through the cracks from time to time, but I don't think the Smiling Man is one of them. Looking into Blue Title's activity on other subreddits, I found that they seem pretty honest and genuine, often discussing martial arts, music, and other topics unrelated to creepypastas and internet horror lore. The fact that the Smiling Man is pretty much the only story the user has told since opening his account in 2012 is a pretty good indication that it's true.
I just met a guy in drugs and turned it into a
dozens of users over the years have claimed to have seen the Smiling Man.
When you tell it like an actually true story about a scary encounter with like some guy on the street, but your writing is so good that it sounds like a creepypasta, that's kind of funny. What are you watching? Creepypastas based on true stories.
Themselves, and a lot of the times it's the original author himself who shows up in the threads to fact check them and call them out when they're embellishing the story or fabricating details that are obviously fake. And sure, this is by no means 100% definitive proof that the Smiling Man was real, but I'm honestly inclined to believe that this actually happened. As for what the Smiling Man's intentions were on that night in 2012, it's really anyone's guess. I'd probably guess the guy was either under the influence of drugs, mentally insane, or really going out of his way to mess with Blue Title for no reason. With so many years having gone by since this incident took place, we'll likely never know. The only thing we can be sure of is that it's probably a good thing the OP ran away when he did. You never know what someone who's clearly not in their right mind is capable of, especially when there are no witnesses.
Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
The year was 1991. In April of 2015, a Reddit user with the mysterious name I'm Sorry Michael posted a harrowing story in the No Sleep subreddit where he shared his first-hand experience of what it was like witnessing a 4-year-old get kidnapped from a school playground in the early 90s. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the No Sleep subreddit doesn't always feature true stories. In fact, it almost never does. It's pretty much entirely creepypastas. But you'll see why that's not so relevant in a second.
The famously true No Sleep subreddit. Okay, wait. Question. Do you guys actually like go through like subreddits and stuff like this? I don't know. I was kind of always warned away from Reddit. So I never actually got into big into using Reddit. I kind of just use it if I'm like Googling something and I want to get an actual real person to answer, is I'll Google like thing Reddit. I used to go on Reddit a bit more before I used Twitter. I think I just used Twitter first, and I got my daily hate, my daily hatefulness from Twitter before I got into Reddit, and then I was kind of like warned away from Reddit, so I just never used it.
He basically tells the story of how he arrived at a school sports field to toss around a ball with some family friends on a warm spring day. As soon as he arrived at the field, the OP allegedly saw a little boy in a blue jacket running on the playground close to the playing field. Suddenly, a suspicious-looking dark van pulled up to the playground and parked right over the hopscotch outline. A few seconds later, a man in a sketchy-looking, low-quality bear costume got out of the vehicle, promised the little boy some candy.
Is this Pedo Bear? Is this Pedo Bear's origin story?
And put him in the back of the van before driving away. Based on the post, the uploader immediately got into his vehicle and tried to catch up with the van, but because he was so unfamiliar with the area, he ended up getting lost. As soon as he called 911, the operator allegedly scolded him for prank calling and hung up on him. It wasn't until the next day that the OP supposedly saw in the news that a 4-year-old boy named Michael Dunahee had disappeared from a school playground the day before. Interestingly, through my research, I was able to find that Michael Dunahee was a real kid that had disappeared, and it really did take place on a school playground in 1991, which makes this Reddit post incredibly creepy. The real story goes that on March 24th, 1991, Crystal Dunahee, Michael's mother, was going to participate in a women's flag football practice at Blandshart Elementary School in Victoria, British Columbia. As soon as she arrived with her son at the school at around 12:30 p.m., Michael asked if he could go to the playground by himself. Immediately, Crystal felt that something wasn't right, but she let her son walk to the playground by himself under the condition that he had to stay there until his dad arrived.
This is why you never play footy.
Unfortunately, by the time his dad arrived, Michael was gone. A search was immediately...
Do Canadians play American football? Or European football? Because flag football is American, right? That's rugby? Oh.
Immediately launched, and Michael was officially declared a missing person. That day, the little boy had been wearing a blue hooded jacket, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt, rugby pants, and blue sneakers.
No, that's a TMNT.
But despite the massive search effort, which quickly became one of the largest police investigations in Canadian history, Michael was never seen again. Over the years, the cops have received over 11,000 tips on the disappearance, but none of them have led to anything significant. Strangely, even though there were dozens of people at the school field that day, there were no witnesses to Michael's disappearance. And the only thing that they could get out of a nearby passerby was that a man in his late 40s or early 50s with a brown van was seen near the playground around the time of the disappearance. Overall, a lot of the details from the official investigation match up perfectly with the Reddit post, but the majority of them were never confirmed by the cops. It's likely that the OP completely made the story up. But that doesn't change the fact that this is at least based on a real event that happened. Sadly, because the disappearance took place over 35 years ago, it's unlikely that Michael will ever be found at this point.
That's sad.
The Alice Killings.
Huh?
The Alice Killings is a Japanese urban legend according to which from 1999 to 2005, a series of brutal, unexplainable murders took place in multiple different towns in Japan. Based on the legend, each victim's life was taken in a very different fashion, and the only thing that tied the murders together was the fact that a playing card was found near or on the victims' bodies when they were found by
Persona.
Disturbingly, the legend mentions that on the playing cards, the killer would write the name Alice in the victim's blood.
I'm sorry.
For example, one of the victims was allegedly buried in a shallow grave with a Queen of Clubs marking its entrance. Another card with the King of Diamonds was found crammed into the hand of another victim at a bar. Over time, people started putting their own twists on the urban legend, turning it into a creepypasta and adding all kinds of details to the original story, as usually happens.
Oh my god! I've watched that video! I remember watching this video because it used Vocaloid. I remember this! Oh my god!
Happens online. But even though the specific details in the story of the Alice Killings are all fake, they're all based on a completely true story that's just as terrifying as the creepypasta. In 2003, an ex-military guy turned security officer in Madrid, Spain named Alfredo Galán Setillo shot a 50-year-old man named Juan Francisco Ledesma in the head in front of his 2-year-old son. From there, Alfredo went on to kill another 5 victims over the next month, all of them picked completely randomly and for no good reason. After taking his second victim's life, he left a tarot card with an ace of clubs near the crime scene.
Tarot?
After which, as you can probably guess, the media started sensationalizing the case, giving Alfredo much more attention than he deserved. And thanks to that, he went on to kill another 4 victims and severely injure another 3, often leaving tarot cards at the scene to fit the picture the media had made of him. In addition to the cards, the killer did have a particular MO in the way he took his victims' lives. All of them were shot at point-blank range, and all of them were picked at random, unlike most serial killers who often stalk and get to know their victims.
Tarot cards don't have suits in the way that, playing cards have suits. Playing cards have aces, spades, diamonds, hearts. Tarot cards have, no, you're thinking of the major arcana. There's minor arcana in a deck of tarot cards. So there's swords, there's my deck has a weird name for them. Like my deck has like knaves. I would have to get my book. It depends on the set. I don't believe in tarot, but the cards look cool. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to believe in them. But yeah, no, they have like 1 through ace in tarot cards. But they, instead of having like so basically in a tarot deck, you'll have basically a set that is like a playing card set, but on top of that, you have the major arcana, which is your hanging man, that is your death, tower, stuff like that. Basic tarot is wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Yeah. Hierophant, yeah. High priestess. So all the different suits and individual cards have meanings to them when you're reading tarot cards. It's just that the major arcana tarot cards are the most well-known because they're basically supposed to be the most deepest meaning. If that makes sense. Like, those are the strongest cards.
Or taking their lives. On July 3rd, 2003, the playing card killer, as he quickly became known, turned himself into the police.
You're right, Amelia. If you draw them, so like when you shuffle tarot cards, you're not shuffling them in the way you would shuffle like a playing card deck. You basically shuffle them just like in a big fucking circle. You mesh them, mix them around. If you draw a card upside down, that's called drawing it in reverse. Meaning, if you're trying to do a reading and you draw a reverse card, the card then means the opposite of what it normally would mean.
In a severely intoxicated state, immediately confessing to the string of murders that had taken Madrid by storm that year.
How are you?
As soon as he sobered up, he tried to take back his confession, but at that point it was too late, as he had already revealed to the cops certain details about the pen markings on the cards that weren't even made public. Disturbingly, during the investigation, it was revealed that before
that would be
carrying
the
out his
Three of
gruesome
Pentacles,
crimes, the
I
killer
believe,
would
or
wish
Three
his
of
victims
Cups.
good morning and ordered them to kneel down before executing them. That same
Ooh.
year, Galan was sentenced to 142 years in prison, a punishment he's serving to this day.
Oh.
In 2023, Netflix made a documentary about him titled The Playing Card Killer. And at the end of the day, that's probably
so
what these killers really
lame.
want deep down, attention. But fortunately,
Calling
he
him
won't be
that,
getting out
that's
anytime
so
soon.
lame.
And let's just hope the crazy amount of attention the media gives these killers doesn't motivate more lunatics to seek notoriety through these kinds of crimes.
Need someone to do a tarot reading on me? I know a lot of like VTubers used to do like
doppelganger.
tarot reading streams.
The Doppelganger is a pretty well-known creepypasta that tells the fictional story of a kid named Trey who lived with his parents in a small rural county in eastern Tennessee. Based on the original Reddit post titled The Doppelganger, Trey's father Henry was a county warden who usually came home from work late in the evenings. One night, Henry came home and hesitantly let his wife and son know that one of his coworkers had been missing for 2 days. That same night, Trey's mom and dad made him promise that he wouldn't open the door for anyone, even for his own parents. The next day, Henry announced to his family that his coworker Mike's body had been found by a creek. Disturbingly, he also mentioned that even though Mike had only been reported missing for 2 days, his body was declared to be at least 2 weeks old when the authorities found him.
Ooh.
This of course meant that somebody had been posing as Mike for several days, spending time with his family and going through his days pretending to be him. That night when Trey went up to his room, he heard a knock on his window. It was his dad's voice asking to let him in, and claiming that he had just gone outside to check on something and had accidentally locked himself out. Eerily, that's when Trey's dad appeared in his doorframe, holding a finger up to his lips, signaling for his son to be quiet. After scaring away whoever was at the window, the family went down to sit together at the kitchen table, fearing for their lives.
Face
Later
off
that
with
evening,
Nick
the
Cage
impersonator
moment.
once again tried to enter the house, pretending to be Trey's dad. This time,
As we
Henry
need to
called
say,
his
wow, that's
officer
crazy every
friends
30
over,
seconds.
who agreed
My
to help him
bad.
track down whoever or whatever it was that was pretending to be him. While his dad was out, Trey went up to his room to hide under the blankets, and when his dad came back, he scolded him and his mother for having left the front door unlocked.
This is like the basis story for all the what are they called? The Uncanny Valley like creepypasta stories and stuff like that. There's a name for them. I'm blanking. No, analog horror. That's what I'm talking about. Analog horror. This like basically I feel like this story is just the basis for all those analog horror
Still, the family went to
stuff.
sleep, and the next morning Trey woke up to an overpowering smell coming from his parents' bedroom. He immediately realized his parents weren't home. Upon opening his parents' closet door, the body of a woman who looked just like his mother tumbled out and onto the floor. As soon as his parents got home, they made up a story to explain what had happened, softening some of the details so their son wouldn't end up even more traumatized. The creepypasta ends with Trey noticing that his dad's hair is a different shade of black than it usually was, leaving the story on a cliffhanger. Obviously, pretty much everything in the creepypasta is entirely made up. But the story itself was based on an illness called Capgras syndrome, which is a real psychiatric...
I can literally explain this to you in terminology of neuroscience. Before he even goes into it, I can explain to you what Capgras syndrome is. Essentially, Capgras syndrome is a cognitive dissonance disorder that usually happens when you get a lesion to your brain, into a certain section of your brain, that messes with how you cognitively recognize someone facially. Because there's certain, obviously, we have kind of figured out there's certain parts of your brain that control different things. Specifically, if there's a lesion to this part of your brain that deals with facial recognition, what ends up happening is you can look people straight into the face, people that you know, and you can't recognize them and you think they're a quote unquote other. But if you were to close your eyes and only listen to their voice, you will recognize who the person is.
Psychiatric condition in which people end up convinced that their family members and other people close to them have been replaced by imposters or doppelgangers.
Is it classified as dementia? No. And also what he just said was completely incorrect. Not all of them believe that their family members are doppelgangers. They just realize they can't recognize their family members by face. It sounds more like schizophrenia. It actually has nothing to do with schizophrenia. Not even close. It is quite literally the part of your brain that does facial recognition is damaged. So I meant what the video guy said. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. There's a thing with the doppelganger thing. There's a basis in it, as in, like, usually when it first, because that's the thing, is if your brain gets lesioned in a way, you'll never know what the impact is. So when this happens to somebody, nowadays, you would find this out pretty immediately in like a hospital setting. This is usually caused by some kind of head trauma, usually after like a car accident or something like that. So nowadays, people don't just, get home after a general head trauma and start screaming that their family members are doppelgangers because they can't recognize their faces. Though it has happened, that is not, we know that this is a thing now. So they generally test these kinds of things when you get a head lesion. But yeah, it basically just means you can't recognize people by their faces, because essentially think of your brain like a computer. Your facial recognition system is broken. So you can only know who they are by their voices.
I found that people with Capgras syndrome often end up becoming aggressive and even violent with the loved ones they accuse of being imposters. And disturbingly, a pretty clear correlation has been found between Capgras syndrome and violent homicides within families. I also found that people with pre-existing neurological disorders such as Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, and stroke are more prone to developing Capgras syndrome, as well as people who suffer from schizophrenia and similar illnesses. One particular case that caught my attention involved a 24-year-old male veteran who turned himself into the police to...
I would like to see his sources for that statement, because that is a very blanket statement to assign to people with Capgras syndrome. Especially because I quite literally studied this in my cognitive psychology class. We had a whole section on Capgras. So it is quite harmful to cast such wide a net and say that most of them are like homicidal or tend to become aggressive. Because there are people who just have Capgras and live normal lives. Espera the neuroscientist. I took a neuroscience class this semester, but overall I study psychology. Me, when I take a sledgehammer to the skull at the job site and out all the skinwalkers because I knocked the chip they implanted me with out of place.
That he had allegedly been violent with his girlfriend. Interestingly, when the cops called his girlfriend to get her side of the story, she mentioned that the allegations were completely false and that her boyfriend had no history of violence. What followed was a pretty confusing series of events where the patient ended up revealing that he was convinced his entire family were imposters. Disturbingly, he claimed that his mother had been replaced by a government employee who had been sent to elicit a confession from him about his behavior while he was in the military.
So this is a real story, and there's been a few. So there was a Criminal Minds episode on this. If you've ever watched Criminal Minds, you know exactly what episode I'm talking about, where basically this guy, this military guy gets home and starts killing like his entire family and friends because he thinks they've all been replaced by like the military.
And punching a wall during boot camp and was scared that his mother would find out about it. Even though the man claimed he had also been violent with his mother, she denied the allegations and assured the doctors that her son was not a violent person. Fortunately, after treatment, the guy was okay, but I can't imagine how terrifying it must be both to wake up convinced that your family isn't really your family and to no longer be recognized by someone you love.
Okay, that's the video.